I'm Rachel, 37. And I thought my parents' retirement party would finally be a night to celebrate us as a family, until my dad raised his glass, smiled, and said, "We've always wished Amanda was our only child." The laughter died, and in that moment, so did any illusion that I still had a family. Grab a cup of coffee, settle into your favorite spot, and let's share this story together. Before we begin, drop a comment to let me know where you're watching from. I love seeing how our stories bring people together from all over. Now, relax and enjoy. I'm Rachel Monroe. I'm 37, a high school librarian, and the kind of person who people forget is in the room, especially when my younger sister Amanda is around. The night of my parents' retirement party started out like a dozen other family gatherings, me smiling through clenched teeth while Amanda basked in every spotlight. The restaurant was beautiful, one of those sleek downtown places with white tablecloths, golden chandeliers, and waiters who refold your napkin the second you leave your seat. Everyone was dressed to impress. I'd worn a navy wrap dress. Simple, elegant Amanda showed up in red. Of course she did. And like always, the moment she walked in, the energy in the room shifted. All heads turned. Our cousin Mark actually clapped. I smiled politely, stood in the corner near the bar, sipping my overpriced Chardonnay and counting down the minutes until I could go home. Amanda worked the room like a seasoned politician, hugging ants, laughing a little too loudly, spinning stories about her retail consulting firm, which I happen to know is just her freelancing from her laptop between gigs. But my parents? They hung on every word. My mom beamed. My dad slapped her on the back like she was closing billion-dollar deals. No mention of the fact that I was the one helping their vintage furniture store stay afloat month after month. Not that I expected it. Still, some part of me thought, maybe tonight would be different. Maybe, after years of bailing them out from unpaid invoices to a near bankruptcy last year, they'd throw me a little gratitude. Just once. I waited for a pause in the conversation and finally stepped forward. I cleared my throat. "I've been looking at the store's numbers," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "There's a pattern in the inventory shrinkage, and I think if you changed vendors you could cut." Amanda didn't even let me finish. She smiled, the kind of smile that says, "I'm about to embarrass you and enjoy it." "That's cute," she said, tilting her head like I was a child playing dress-up. "You and your spreadsheets. Don't worry, I've got actual strategy planned for Q3. Some people laughed. A few just looked away. I swallowed hard. "It's not just spreadsheets. I've saved the business from shutting down twice this year." Mom sighed loudly. "Rachel, let's not get into numbers tonight. Amanda's launching a summer rebrand, let's hear about that." I felt my cheeks flush. My heart pounded so loudly I couldn't hear the rest of what Amanda was saying. Probably something about mood boards and pop-up shops that never happen. My hands curled under the table. I stared at my plate. I hadn't even touched my dinner. And then came the toast. Dad stood up, lifted his glass. 35 years, he began, his voice full of pride. A lifetime of hard work, laughter, and building something meaningful. I tried to smile. I wanted to believe he was including both of us in that. He raised his glass higher. "But honestly," he said, locking eyes with me, "we've always wished Amanda was our only child." The room froze. Someone at the next table gasped. A fork clinked loudly against a plate. Amanda didn't flinch. She just smirked. Mom didn't say a word. Didn't even look at me. For a full 10 seconds I was frozen. My breath caught in my throat, my hands suddenly ice cold. I looked around. No one made eye contact. A few of my cousins awkwardly sipped their wine. It hit me then, not just the words, but the years behind them. The math competitions they skipped. The holidays I spent alone because Amanda needed more attention. The money I wired to keep their business open. The vacations I didn't take. The new car I couldn't afford. Every sacrifice. Dismissed in one sentence. He wished I didn't exist. I pushed my chair back slowly. The sound of it scraping against the floor was louder than anything else in the room. I stood up. Amanda's smirk widened, daring me to cause a scene. I didn't. I looked my dad dead in the eye. "Enjoy your party," I said quietly. Then I turned and walked out. My heels clicked across the hardwood like a countdown clock, each step peeling away years of trying to matter to people who had already decided I didn't. I didn't cry until I hit the sidewalk. The cold air of Cleveland slapped my face like a truth I couldn't unhear. That was the moment I knew. I wasn't their daughter. I was their utility. And I was done. By the time I got home that night, my coat still smelled like wine and expensive perfume. I tossed it over the back of the couch and just stood there, staring into the dark. I didn't turn on the lights. I didn't want to see the picture frames on the wall, the ones with family photos I'd forced myself to keep up. I didn't want reminders. I walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and sat at the table, still in my heels, my dress wrinkled from the Uber ride. It was dead silent except for the soft hum of the fridge. That toast, those exact words played on repeat in my head. We've always wished Amanda was our only child. He meant it. It wasn't a joke or a slip. It was a truth he'd been holding back for decades, and he finally said it out loud because he knew there would be no consequences, because no one at that table would challenge him, because I had made it too easy to overlook me. I leaned forward, elbows on the table, and finally let my head fall into my hands. I didn't sob. Not yet, just sat there, jaw clenched, eyes burning. What did I expect? That after all the years of wiring money $500 every single month after updating their payroll system, fixing the inventory glitch, negotiating with their wholesaler, they'd see me? They didn't even see me leave. I pulled out my phone and opened the group chat. The one labeled family, me, dad, mom, Amanda. I stared at it for a while. The last message was from Amanda earlier that night. Almost there. Can't wait to see everyone. I typed slowly. My fingers didn't shake. They should have. But they didn't. I'm done. No more money. No more advice. Don't contact me again. I stared at the message, then hit send. The moment I did, I felt this strange stillness come over me. Like I'd just slammed a door and finally locked it from the inside. The screen stayed lit, waiting. Within 30 seconds, the typing dots appeared under Mom, then Dad, then Amanda. I turned my phone face down and set it on the table. A minute later, it buzzed. Then again, and again. It didn't stop. 3 calls in a row from Dad. 2 texts from Mom. 1 from Amanda, just the word. Seriously? Seriously, that word sat heavier than the toast. I stood up and walked to the sink. Splashed water on my face. Looked at myself in the dark window. Hair messy. Makeup smudged. Eyes tired. I didn't recognize the woman staring back. I picked up the phone and opened Dad's voicemail. His voice came through, casual at first. Rachel, I think maybe you're overreacting. It was just a toast. We've all had wine. Let's talk about this tomorrow. Overreacting. There it was again, the subtle gaslighting. The reframe. It wasn't about what he said. It was about how I took it. I deleted the voicemail. Mom's message came next. Text only. Rachel, please don't do this. We're family. Amanda didn't mean to laugh, she was nervous. Let's talk, okay? There was never a, sorry. Never a, we were wrong. Always let's talk. Like maybe if I just listened harder, I'd see how they were the real victims here. Amanda, of course, sent something different. You're making a scene. Grow up. That one, I screenshotted, just in case. My chest tightened, but I didn't cry. Not yet. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't need to. The sadness was there, sure. But underneath it was something else. Something new. Resolve. I turned off notifications. Blocked Amanda. Silenced the thread. Then I walked into my bedroom, kicked off my heels, and curled up on the bed with a blanket wrapped around me like armor. I didn't sleep. I just stared at the ceiling and listened to the silence. Not the kind that makes you lonely, the kind that makes you realize how loud the noise used to be. I thought about every late-night phone call when they were panicking over the books. Every wire transfer I sent without question. Every time Amanda was praised for saving the business with a new chalkboard sign while I was behind the scenes fixing the tax filings they never understood. And I thought no more. This wasn't just about that night. That toast wasn't the wound. It was the confirmation. I was never the daughter. I was the accountant. The emergency fund. The invisible fix-it girl who never asked for credit because she thought maybe love would come later. It won't. And I finally believed that. So I sat in that bed and made a decision. I wasn't just done helping. I was done protecting them from the truth. But nothing could have prepared me for what Amanda did next. The next morning, I walked into work like nothing had happened. At least, that was the plan. I nodded at the receptionist, smiled at a student who held the door, and made my way to the break room, clutching a travel mug I'd barely remembered to fill. I was on autopilot, hair pulled back, blouse tucked in, everything in place except me. My phone buzzed before I even sat down. At first, I thought it was my mother again. Or Dad. Or maybe Amanda trying to spin her guilt into another guilt trip. But when I unlocked my phone, it wasn't a text or a voicemail. It was a tag. Facebook. A mutual cousin, Stephanie, had tagged me in a comment. I tapped on it, expecting something innocent. A photo from the retirement party, maybe. But what I saw stopped me cold. Amanda had made a public post. Some people pretend to help, but all they really do is make you feel small. It's always the ones who play victim the loudest that cause the most damage. I've had enough of being used. Family or not, no names, no direct accusations, but everyone who knew us would understand exactly who she was talking about. The comments had already started. So sorry you're dealing with that. You deserve better, Amanda. Some people just can't handle your light. It was expected with protection. We always knew something was off with Rachel. My stomach dropped. I scrolled further. Another post. This one less vague. When someone you trusted tries to sabotage your business from the inside, it makes you question everything. But I believe the truth always comes out. Sabotage. She wasn't just throwing shade, she was flipping the entire narrative. I felt my heart pound in my chest. My fingers went cold. I sat down at the break room table, barely noticing the stale smell of old coffee or the hum of the vending machine. My hands trembled as I reread the post. Again and again. Sabotage? That's what she was calling me now? I'd spent years keeping that store running unpaid, unthanked, unacknowledged. And now she was planting the idea that I was the one trying to ruin it? I checked Messenger. Sure enough, 3 unread messages from relatives I hadn't heard from in months. Hey, just checking in. Are you okay? I saw Amanda's post. What's going on with the business? Should we be worried? I hope you two can work it out. Family's too important to fight over money. Fight over money? I hadn't asked for a single dime from them. All I'd ever done was give, and still, the doubt had been planted. The break room door creaked. I quickly locked my phone screen and smiled at Dina, my coworker and closest friend at the school. She grabbed a yogurt from the fridge and sat across from me, eyeing me carefully. You look like you haven't slept, she said. I didn't, I replied, voice flat. She waited. I didn't offer more. After a beat, she asked, Is this about what happened at the party? I nodded slowly. They crossed a line. She raised an eyebrow. You finally cut them off? I looked down at my coffee. Yeah. Sent the message last night. Good. She peeled back the lid of her yogurt. You've been propping them up like scaffolding. Let 'em fall. I tried to smile, but it didn't land. She noticed. What happened? I'll ask you, Min. I unlocked my phone and slid it across the table, showing her Amanda's post. She scrolled. Her eyes narrowed. She's spinning it, she muttered. She's making you the villain. I nodded. And people are buying it. Dina looked up. You're not going to let her, right? I didn't answer, because the truth was, I didn't know what to do. Amanda had always been the golden one, the one who could do no wrong. When I tried to speak up, I was dramatic, bitter, jealous. And now, she was turning that exact story into fact, in front of friends, relatives, former teachers, even people from our neighborhood. All of them seeing a version of me that wasn't true. I clenched my jaw. I wouldn't let her rewrite me into the villain in my own life. I picked up my phone again and scrolled back through her page. There it was, another post, newer than the others. Had to deal with legal drama this week, fake signatures and all. Wild how some people think they can claim what isn't theirs. I froze. My blood went cold. Fake signatures? What the hell was she talking about? I read the post again. And again. And just then, like fate had cued it, my phone buzzed with a new message. It was from my cousin Michael. A screenshot. A legal-looking document. A deed transfer form. My name was on it. My signature was on it. But I'd never seen it before. And that's when I knew. Amanda wasn't just dragging my name online. She was trying to steal something far bigger. And she was willing to commit fraud to do it. By the time I got home that night, the apartment felt different. Not quieter, it was always quiet. But off. Like something had shifted and the air knew before I did. I kicked off my shoes by the door and left my coat on the chair. The lights from the street poured in through the blinds, striping my floor in gold and gray. My phone buzzed again. Another message from my cousin Michael. You need to see this, she's lost it. Attached was a PDF. The file loaded slowly, or maybe it just felt that way because my pulse had started pounding the moment I saw the words property transfer agreement in the file name. The document was a scanned form. My parents' names were listed as the owners. Amanda's name? Printed cleanly as the new sole recipient of their home. Our childhood home. The one they'd always said they'd leave to both girls. But what stopped me cold, sick, and suddenly very alert was what sat at the bottom of page 3. My name, my signature, in my handwriting. Except I hadn't signed a damn thing. I leaned back from the screen like it might burn me. My mind raced. Where had she even gotten a sample of my signature? And how long had she been planning this? I printed the document, hands shaking, and pulled out the folder I kept in the file cabinet under the kitchen counter. The one labeled, family stuff. Inside was the real paperwork I'd signed years ago when my parents refinanced. The difference was small, but I could see it. The curves in the letters were too smooth. The spacing was off. Whoever forged it, they knew what they were doing. But not well enough. I stared at the fake version again, now on paper. Amanda had taken this to the county registrar. I recognized the stamped seal. This wasn't just a proposal, it had already been submitted. And if I hadn't seen this, she'd have walked away with the house. I paced the apartment, fists clenched, mind buzzing like a live wire. This wasn't passive-aggressive Facebook drama anymore. This was criminal. This was fraud. And suddenly, all the petty jabs, the public smears, the sideways comments, the years of being dismissed and ignored, they sharpened into something very clear. Amanda wasn't just mean, she was dangerous. She knew exactly what she was doing, and she thought I'd be too meek, too loyal, too invisible to ever fight back. She was wrong. I grabbed my phone and scrolled to my contacts. My thumb hovered over a name I hadn't called in over a year. May Carter. Judge May Carter. Retired probate judge. My godmother, she'd been at my christening, taught me how to braid my hair, and sent me a card every single birthday, even when I forgot hers. After retiring, she moved to a quiet little house on the west side of town. But her mind? Still sharp enough to slice glass. I hit call. She picked up on the second ring. Rachel? I didn't even say hi. I need your help. It's Amanda. She forged my signature on a deed transfer. She's trying to steal the house. A beat of silence. Then, are you home? Yes. Don't touch anything else. I'm on my way. 30 minutes later, May stood in my kitchen, holding the forged paperwork in one hand and the original in the other. She wore her usual blazer over jeans and read like someone used to giving orders in a courtroom. She's bold, May muttered, scanning the page again. This isn't amateur work. She submitted it, I said. To the county. May looked up. And your parents? I have no idea if they even know. Or if they're in on it. She didn't say anything for a long time. Just stared at the signatures, lips pressed tight. Then she folded the paper slowly, carefully, and slipped it into her leather folder. This is a felony, she said plainly. Forgery of legal documents, fraud, possibly conspiracy if anyone helped her. My stomach flipped, but I kept my face still. May sat down across from me, hands clasped on the table. Rachel, listen to me. You have two options right now. One, you do nothing. Let this play out, pretend you didn't see it, and hope she doesn't succeed. I didn't blink. Or two, she said, leaning forward. You fight. Legally. Publicly. And you end this. I nodded, my throat dry. I want to fight. May nodded once. Good. Then we start tomorrow. I let out a long breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. For the first time in days, I didn't feel crazy. Or paranoid. Or small. I felt seen. I walked May to the door, still clutching my copy of the forged form like evidence in a crime show. Which, in a way, it was. As she stepped into the hallway, she turned back. Don't underestimate her, she said. Amanda's not just manipulative, she's strategic. But now, so are you. The door shut behind her. And I stood there, surrounded by silence, holding proof in my hands that everything I suspected, everything I tried to ignore, was real. This wasn't just manipulation. This was fraud, and I was going to stop it. The next morning at school, the library felt like the only place in the world where I could still breathe. Rows of shelved books, the hum of overhead lights, the occasional shuffle of sneakers across the carpet. It was safe here. Quiet, predictable, unlike everything else in my life. I sat behind the main desk with my laptop open, a spreadsheet glowing on the screen. Not for the library. For them. For the last time. The numbers stared back at me like an accusation. $500. Every month. 12 times a year. For over 6 years. That was over $36,000 I'd given my parents, not loaned, given to help keep their store from falling apart. And that didn't even count the free consulting, the hours of bookkeeping I did after long workdays, the late-night phone calls filled with panic and passive-aggressive guilt. I scrolled through my banking app one last time. The last transfer had gone out just 2 weeks ago. Like clockwork, no more. I hovered over the scheduled payment and canceled it. No fireworks, no confetti. Just a quiet little confirmation box. Recurring transfer canceled. And with that, I was done. Hey. Dina's voice broke through the stillness. She walked in carrying 2 coffees and a look that said she could read my mind. Vanilla latte. You look like you need it. I took the cup. You have no idea. She sat across from me at the table near the circulation desk. Did May give you a plan? I nodded. She's already started. Paperwork's in motion. Dina leaned in, eyebrows raised. And your parents? Amanda? I took a deep breath and pulled out my phone. This is the part I've been avoiding. Hey. I opened Instagram. Found Amanda's profile. Her latest post was still live, another vague but vicious caption. A photo of a coffee mug that read "Too classy for revenge," with the caption, "Some people are just bitter. They're not in the will." Cute? I hit block. Next. Mom. Her feed was filled with garden photos and inspirational quotes she didn't live by. Block. Then Dad. Barely used his account. But I knew he checked messages. Block. And then I did the same on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Messenger. Dina watched me the whole time, saying nothing. When I finished, I looked up. It felt like deleting a part of my life. It was a part, she said. But not the one you deserved. Said also stewing into be en hasten her mind. My phone buzzed almost instantly. A new text. From Mom. Rachel. I see you blocked me. Please don't do this. You're being dramatic. We need your help with inventory this month. I stared at it, mouth tightening. 10 seconds later, another. Also, the store insurance bill is due next week. Can you just send the usual? Dina leaned over to read. You've got to be kidding me. I didn't answer the text. Instead, I opened the message thread and typed, "Please do not contact me again about the store. This is your responsibility now." Then, I muted the conversation. Not blocked, just silenced. Let them scream into the void if they needed to. I wouldn't hear it. Feels weird, I admitted. Like I just shut off a part of myself. You didn't shut anything off, Dina said, sipping her coffee. You stopped feeding a fire that was burning you alive. I smiled a little at that. That dramatic phrasing sounds like something Amanda would post in cursive font on a pink background. Dina laughed. Then let me rephrase. You just saved your damn self, and it's about time. For the rest of the lunch period, we sat there in a calm I hadn't felt in weeks, maybe months. I started organizing a new book display for the fall semester. Something simple, banned books week. Dina helped pick titles while I drafted a flyer. It was mundane, normal, grounding, and for a few minutes, it felt like the world outside the library didn't exist. Until my phone buzzed again. I hesitated, then flipped it over. A new email. Subject line. Immediate action required. Property title review. It was from the county recorder's office. I opened it, heart pounding. Inside was a short, clipped message. The review May had requested had gone through. The title transfer had been flagged. An investigation had been opened. Good. I smiled just a little and stood up to shelve a book. It was done. The money was cut off. The legal wheels were in motion. Amanda couldn't just pretend I didn't matter anymore. She couldn't erase me, and she definitely couldn't forge her way into stealing what I never agreed to give. I looked out the library window. Students crossing the courtyard. The bell ringing faintly in the distance. Life moving on. For the first time in a long time, I felt, okay, not perfect, not healed, but free. I thought I'd finally bought peace, but Amanda was just getting started. If this story touches you, drop a number 1 inch the comments. Everyone reminds us that these stories matter, and it gives us the motivation to keep sharing them with you. By Tuesday, I'd started to believe the worst might be over. The forged deed was being reviewed. The payments were cut off. Amanda and my parents were blocked. May had the legal side under control. And for the first time in months, I wasn't waking up to a panic attack. I even had a good morning. Helped a freshman pick out their first real novel. Repaired a jammed laminator. Had 2 uninterrupted hours of cataloging new titles. Then, just after lunch, I got the email. Subject. Please report to the main office at 1:30. Sender. Linda Reynolds. Principal. Nothing else. No context. At first, I thought maybe it was about the new literacy program proposal I'd submitted. Or maybe a student complaint about the overdue fine policy. Something minor. But the second I walked into Linda's office and saw Trisha from HR already seated at the side table, I knew something was off. Linda's office was tidy, almost sterile. Diplomas perfectly aligned. A tiny desktop waterfall burbled in the corner. But today, it felt like an interrogation room. "Rachel," Linda said, gesturing to the chair across from her. Her voice was soft, but not warm. "Thanks for coming." Saturday Trisha offered a polite nod. She opened a manila folder. "We just wanted to speak with you privately about a concern that's been raised," Trisha said. My stomach tightened. "Okay. What kind of concern?" Trisha glanced at Linda, then back to me. "We received an anonymous email over the weekend. It accused you of exhibiting signs of emotional instability and potentially creating a tense environment for students." I blinked. "What?" Linda folded her hands. "We're not making any assumptions, Rachel. This is simply part of protocol. We have to document the complaint and begin an internal review." "Anonymous?" I asked. My voice came out sharper than I meant it to. "So, anyone can just email and accuse me of being unstable, and now I'm under review?" "Not under review," Trisha said quickly. "We're conducting an initial inquiry. Just fact-finding." I felt my pulse spike in my neck. "Did the email include any examples? Any evidence?" "And detentary. And being broden the things." Trisha flipped through the folder. "It mentioned an incident where you allegedly became agitated during a class visit to the library. Raised your voice, appeared flustered, and dismissed a student's question." I stared at her. That never happened. I knew it didn't. Every class visit I'd hosted that month had gone smoothly boring, even. My tone might have gotten firm when someone tried to shove a graphic novel down another student's backpack as a prank. But that was it. I breathed in through my nose and looked between them. "You think Amanda sent this?" I said flatly. Linda's eyes flicked toward Trisha, cautious now. "You believe a family member submitted the complaint?" "And the sedded tappen his hasted was a brand of the tapik was not alongus. She's been on a smear campaign for days," I said. "Social media posts, vague accusations, she even forged my name on a deed transfer. I'm working with legal counsel right now." Trisha raised an eyebrow. "Do you have documentation of that?" "I do," I said. "And I can provide it. But this is her pushing further. She's not getting money or attention anymore, so now she's coming after my job." Linda shifted slightly in her seat. "Rachel, please understand. We're not accusing you of anything. But we have to take every concern seriously, even anonymous ones." I nodded slowly, jaw tight. "I'll cooperate," I said. "But I'd also like a copy of that email. For my records." Trisha hesitated. "We can request redacted excerpts." "No," I said. "Full copy. I have legal reasons." Linda glanced at her, then nodded. "We'll forward what we're allowed to." I stood. "Anything else?" "Not at this time," Trisha said. "We may follow up with observations in the coming weeks." I left the office in a haze. In the hallway, everything looked normal. Students passing by with backpacks slung low, teachers chatting near the water fountain. But to me, it all sounded muffled, like I was walking through fog. I ducked into the staff lounge and shut the door. The second I sat down, my hands started shaking. Amanda had crossed a line I hadn't even imagined yet. She was trying to take my reputation, my livelihood, because I'd said no. Because I'd stopped playing the good, quiet sister who absorbed the damage while smiling through it. This wasn't just retaliation. This was war. I pulled out my phone and texted May. "They're coming for my job now." Anonymous email. "I need a strategy." 3 dots appeared almost immediately. "Keep calm. Gather everything. I have a friend in employment law. Do not panic. We will protect your record." I stared at her reply. My breathing slowed, but only just. Amanda thought she could break me. Thought a few well-placed lies and some vague accusations would unravel the life I'd built without her. But what she didn't know, what she had never bothered to learn, was that I didn't just survive by being quiet. I survived by keeping receipts, and I had something in my back pocket she didn't see coming. The first time I ever sat in that coffee shop with May Carter, I was 10, and she ordered me a hot chocolate with extra whipped cream and told me that silence doesn't mean weakness. Sometimes it's strategy. Now, almost 3 decades later, I slid into the same corner booth, no whipped cream in sight, and I wasn't the same girl. But I was ready to learn how to fight. May was already there when I arrived. Same posture, same calm energy, but sharper, like she'd been waiting for this moment longer than I had. A closed leather folder sat in front of her on the table. "Rachel," she said, nodding, her voice warm but clipped. "You holding up?" Barely, I admitted. But I canceled the payments, blocked the calls, and I came to you. Good, she said, gesturing for me to sit. Because this isn't something you can walk away from anymore. She opened the folder and pulled out the forged deed and the document we'd retrieved from the recorder's office. She slid them side by side. See this? She said, pointing at the bottom corner. That seal means she filed it as official. That makes this more than shady, it makes it criminal. I nodded slowly, though my throat was tight. May leaned in. Forging your signature on a property transfer without your consent? That's fraud. That's identity theft. That's a felony, Rachel. I knew it was bad, I said. But hearing you say it out loud, it's serious, she said. And it's exactly the leverage we need. May pulled out a legal pad and clicked her pen. We're going to build a timeline. I want dates, transfers, phone calls, emails, anything you have. And I want names. I pulled out my own folder. One I'd started the night Amanda posted her first smear. Inside were screenshots, bank statements, and even old texts. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was prepared. We spent the next hour going piece by piece. I laid it all out. The monthly payments I'd sent for 6 years. The messages asking for help with payroll and a small favor just this once. The fake signature on the deed. The anonymous email to my job. The social media posts vague but targeted. May kept writing, occasionally muttering unbelievable under her breath. When we hit a lull, she sat back, flipping through the pages. You've done your homework, she said. I've had a lot of practice being invisible, I replied. It's made me a good observer. She gave me a small smile. Well, now it's time to be visible. Legally, visibly, and with every document we've got. I took a sip of my now cold coffee, trying to calm the storm in my chest. And Rachel, May said, her voice softening. There's one more thing we should look into. I looked up. You remember your Uncle Dean? I blinked. Of course. He passed about 5 years ago. She nodded. He left a trust. Not a huge one, but decent some property. Old investments. It was supposed to be divided between your parents and their children. I never saw a dime, I said. Amanda said the trust was emptied to pay off store debt. May's eyes narrowed. Amanda said? Yeah. She told me Dad cashed it out years ago. May gave a low hum. Funny, because last week, I ran into Charles Kessler, Dean's old lawyer. He mentioned something strange. Said the trust had an integrity clause added before Dean passed. Integrity clause? I asked. Means the distribution isn't automatic. The assets go to the heir who proves, in the trustee's judgment, to be acting in good faith and aligned with the original intent of the trust. In this case, family legacy, responsibility, and fairness. I stared at her. You think I'm still eligible? I asked. May smiled. I think Amanda's been banking on you not asking questions. I sat back in the booth, mind racing. This wasn't just about the forged deed anymore. It wasn't just about the Facebook posts or the poisoned texts to my job. There was something bigger, something Amanda didn't want me to find. May placed her hand gently over mine. You're not crazy, Rachel. You're not bitter. And you're not wrong. My eyes burned, but I blinked the tears back. I didn't want sympathy. I wanted justice. May stood, collecting the papers into her folder. I'll reach out to Kessler and get the trust details. You keep documenting. Every message. Every call. From here on out, everything's evidence. I nodded. She paused before leaving. Amanda's counting on you to keep shrinking. Let's make sure she's very disappointed. Sell is one of this third of the sated freighting. As I watched May walk out of the shop, spine straight, folder in hand, I felt something rising in me I hadn't felt in years. Not just anger. Not just hope. Power. There might be more than justice at stake here, there might be money. And for once, I wasn't going to let them take it from me. Walking into the Cuyahoga County Records office felt like stepping into the past. And not just because the lobby still looked like it hadn't been updated since 1994. Everything was beige. The walls, the desks. Even the bored-looking woman behind the reception window wore a cardigan that matched the floor tile. But I wasn't there for aesthetics. I was there for answers. May had called earlier that morning. She'd spoken with Uncle Dean's former estate lawyer, Charles Kessler, and confirmed something I never expected. The trust Amanda claimed was gone? It wasn't. Not only did it still exist, but Uncle Dean had updated the will before he passed. And that change could alter everything. I approached the front desk and gave my name. The receptionist pulled up the file, request May had submitted, and gestured toward a side window. They'll bring the documents there. Shouldn't take long. Kane Kanda. 10 minutes later, I was sitting at a small wooden table in a side room, flipping through a thick folder with an embossed label. Estate of Dean Monroe. Revised trust documents. I skimmed through the first few pages, dry legal jargon, notarized signatures, line items that made my head spin. Then I saw it, a heading stamped in bold. Amendment to distribution terms. Dated March 22nd, 5 years ago. I read every word, slowly. In consideration of family dynamics observed in recent years, the trustee shall award the total value of the Monroe Trust to the niece, who demonstrates enduring integrity, sustained contribution to family welfare, and ethical conduct under duress. How? It's not Ling Day. There was a clause about a discretionary evaluation period, and one line that made my stomach flip. If no eligible heir is determined, remaining assets shall be donated to the Monroe Family Foundation or its successor charity. I sat back in my chair, heart pounding. This wasn't a split inheritance. It wasn't a 50-50. Dean had created a test, a quiet, legal safety net, and buried it behind layers of procedural red tape, and Amanda had either never known or assumed she already passed. I flipped to the summary page at the back of the file. There, under a trustee's notes column, was my name. Recommended heir, Rachel Monroe. Verified ongoing financial contributions to family business. Evidence of ethical restraint in family conflicts. 0 claims made to trust pre-death. I read it 3 times, just to be sure. The trustee Kessler had been watching, recording, evaluating, and I had passed. The trust was still active, and I was the designated heir. I stared at the paper, my fingers trembling just slightly, not from greed, from validation. After all the gaslighting, after the years of being told I was bitter, dramatic, selfish here, was legal proof that someone in the family had seen me. Not the daughter who stayed quiet, not the sister who gave too much, but the one who never asked for anything and kept giving anyway. This wasn't just a win. This was a reckoning. The file included an asset list. Uncle Dean had been quieter than my parents, but smarter. 2 commercial rental properties, 1 condo in Fort Myers, several long-term CDs. Total estimated value? Well, into 6 figures, maybe 7, depending on the market. All of it. Mine. As I packed the documents into the envelope May had given me, I paused. Amanda had told me to my face that the trust was gone. Dad used it to save the store, she'd said. It's empty. But it wasn't. She either lied, or she knew and tried to beat me to it. And that deed she forged? It wasn't about their current home. It was about positioning herself as the responsible daughter, the golden heir, the one worthy of Dean's fortune. Except she underestimated one thing. Dean knew. He knew what they did to me, how they treated me, how Amanda took credit for what I built, and how Mom and Dad stood by in silence. And long before I ever learned to protect myself, he did it for me. He made sure I wouldn't leave empty-handed. I didn't have to step foot in that store to know it was falling apart. The updates came through my cousin Tara, the one person in the family who'd always quietly rooted for me. She worked part-time at the shop, mostly for extra income and to stay connected. But now she was my eyes and ears. The first text came on a Thursday afternoon. Amanda just screamed at a delivery guy because he wouldn't accept a post-dated check. She's unraveling. I couldn't help it, I smiled. The next update came 2 days later, followed by a photo. Inventory's a mess. No tracking, no system. She's blaming everyone but herself. In the photo, chairs were stacked in the wrong places. Antique mirrors sat propped against walls with peeling tags. And the sales desk was buried under unopened boxes. I remembered that desk. I'd spent hours behind it on weekends, reconciling end-of-day sales, re-entering returns, resetting the point-of-sale system Amanda accidentally broke more times than I could count. Back then, I did it for free. Out of guilt. Out of duty. Now? Let it burn. Tara called me later that week. I know you're done, she said carefully. But you should know Amanda's pretending like she has it under control. But she doesn't. She's in way over her head. I sipped my coffee at my kitchen table, legs tucked under me, laptop open to the trust paperwork. Of course she is, I said. She thinks charm and hashtags are a substitute for math. Tara chuckled. She actually tried to run a flash sale without calculating overhead. They lost money on every single item sold. That was the thing about Amanda, she was all optics. She knew how to sell a fantasy, not a product. Her ideas sounded good in conversation but collapsed in practice. I'd spent years quietly patching those holes before the boat ever took on water, but now, I wasn't bailing them out anymore. No more checks. No more spreadsheets. No more sleepless nights. And without me, the whole thing was sinking. Tara's voice softened. Your mom was crying yesterday, said the landlord sent a warning. Which one? I asked, calmly. The real one? Or the emotional one? Both. I didn't laugh. I didn't gloat. But inside, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Not because they were suffering, but because I wasn't. I wasn't picking up the pieces this time. I wasn't rescuing people who never once offered me a life vest. Let them drown, Tara continued, hesitant. Amanda's trying to blame it all on you. Telling people you left without notice. That you sabotaged the vendor contracts. Did she tell them about the forged deed? Silence. She didn't, huh? No, Tara said. She didn't. I nodded, unsurprised. Of course not. There was a pause, then a quiet shift in Tara's voice. I just want you to know some of us see what's really happening. We always have. We were just too scared to say anything before. I blinked. That landed harder than I expected. Thanks, I said, voice catching just slightly. That means more than you think. When we hung up, I stared at the wall for a long moment. This was what real power looked like, not revenge, not rage. Just refusing to carry what wasn't mine anymore. No one saw me leaving as dramatic. They saw it for what it was. A reckoning. Later that night, I pulled out my old notebook, the one I used to jot ideas for the store when I still believed they'd listen. Half-baked marketing plans, budget hacks, inventory reworks. All things Amanda had dismissed as boring. I flipped to the last page. Wrote a single sentence. You don't need to light everything on fire. Just stop holding up the ceiling. The next morning, the final message came. An envelope. Plain, white, stamped. From the bank. Tara sent a photo with no caption. I zoomed in on the label. And read the words I had expected for months, maybe years. Notice of foreclosure proceedings. Monroe Family Interiors. My phone buzzed again. They're losing the store. I was folding laundry and humming along to an old Norah Jones playlist when the first voicemail came in. I didn't even look at the screen. I'd gotten so used to silencing calls from my parents that I hardly reacted anymore. But something about the tone in the message preview caught my attention. Rachel, it's urgent. Please just call back. It was my mom. And she sounded scared. I let the message play while I continued folding towels. My hands steady. My heart unmoved. We got something in the mail today. From the IRS. It's a notice they're auditing the store's taxes. We don't know what to do. Amanda says we're missing forms. Rachel, you know how to fix this. You always fix things. Please just call back. I stopped folding. Let the silence settle back over the room. Then hit delete. A few minutes later, another voicemail, this time from Dad. His voice was lower, gruffer, like he was trying not to sound panicked. We've got a real mess here, Rach. There's talk of penalties. We might owe more than we thought. You were the one who handled the books. You must have seen this coming. Come on, don't leave us hanging. That last line made me laugh. Don't leave us hanging. I'd been hanging by a thread for years, and no one so much as offered a hand. And now? I was supposed to swoop in like some desperate fixer in a cape and untangle the knots they tied themselves into? Not this time. I poured myself a glass of iced tea and opened my laptop, scanning through my growing file of screenshots and legal documents. The trust paperwork was nearly complete. May had already requested a formal transfer of assets. All I had to do now was wait for the official ruling. Outside my window, the streetlights flickered on one by one, bathing the neighborhood in soft amber glow. Peace. That's what this felt like. Not triumph, not revenge, just peace. Then my phone buzzed again. A text this time. From Amanda. Of course. You win. The store's falling apart. Is that what you wanted? No greeting, no apology, no hint of ownership. Just the same old manipulation, dressed up like surrender. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't have words, but because I finally didn't feel the need to explain myself. The next day, I got an email from the county treasurer's office. The property Amanda tried to steal, the one she forged my name for, had been flagged for legal review. The paperwork May submitted had done its job. A formal investigation was underway. By the end of the week, I'd heard from 2 more relatives. My Aunt Cheryl called to check in, which was code for, I heard the store's in trouble, and I want to know who to blame. And my cousin Jeremy messaged me to say Amanda was calling around asking if anyone had bookkeeping experience. She said it's just a hiccup, he wrote. but she looked rough. I think she's in over her head. Rough. Amanda wasn't used to consequences. She was used to applause. I closed my eyes and leaned back in my chair, letting the moment wash over me. The store was going under. The IRS was circling. The family was scattering. And I hadn't lifted a single finger. I'd just stopped. No more money. No more fixes. No more swallowing my pain just to keep everyone else afloat. And as things crumbled around them, all I felt was strength. Real, earned, quiet strength. I didn't need revenge. They were doing it to themselves. But Amanda wasn't done scheming. She had one more move. And it was dangerous. I wasn't expecting anyone. It was a Thursday. I'd just finished logging new titles for the school's library catalog and was halfway through heating up leftover lasagna when the knock came. 3 short raps. Firm. Unfamiliar. I checked the peephole and froze. It was Erica. Amanda's best friend, or at least she had been. I hadn't seen her in months. Not since the party. She hadn't commented on any of the drama online, hadn't texted or liked or so much as double-tapped a photo since the fallout. And honestly, I'd filed her under Amanda's people and assumed I'd never hear from her again. But now she was standing on my doorstep, arms crossed, eyes flicking toward the hallway camera like she knew this wasn't a casual drop-in. I opened the door just enough to keep the chain on. "Erica? Rachel?" she said. "Can we talk?" I hesitated. She looked different. Not glamour perfect like Amanda always demanded, just tired. Real. "I don't want drama," I said. "No drama," she promised. "Just the truth." I unlatched the chain. She stepped inside, clutching a small black folder to her chest like it was nuclear codes. I gestured to the couch, and she sat down slowly, glancing around my modest apartment like she didn't expect me to live so calmly. "You drink tea?" I asked. "Only if it's strong." I poured 2 mugs and sat across from her. She didn't waste time. "I haven't spoken to Amanda in weeks," she said. She flipped on me when I questioned the deed transfer, called me disloyal and blocked my number. I raised an eyebrow. "So you came to me?" Erica nodded, swallowing hard. "Because I know what she did. And I have proof." She opened the folder. Inside, screenshots, emails, even handwritten notes Amanda had scribbled during one of their planning sessions. Things that made my stomach turn. Emails between Amanda and a shady legal assistant, discussing streamlining the signature process. Screenshots of text messages with Amanda bragging, "She won't even notice if we move fast. She's slow with paperwork." Even a Dropbox folder labeled, "If Rachel pushes back." Number 4 sign. "When it's a broad-downness of this." She told me the plan was just to secure the house early, Erica said. She made it sound like a formality, like your parents wanted it done but were too sentimental to ask. I laughed bitter. Short. Sentimental? My dad said he wished Amanda was their only child. At their own party. Erica blinked, then looked away. "I didn't know that." "She's been coming for my job," I continued. "Anonymous HR complaints, social media smears. The forged deed was just one piece." "I believe you," Erica said. "I didn't at first. I made excuses for her for years. But she's not just manipulative, she's reckless and cruel." There was a long pause. I looked at the documents again, then at her. "Why now?" I asked. She met my eyes. "Because I saw myself in you. I stayed close to Amanda because I was scared. I thought if I kept her happy, I'd be safe. But she turned on me the second I wasn't useful." That word hit hard. "Useful." "Welcome to the club," I said quietly. She smiled, tired. "I'm not looking for forgiveness, but I want to help. And if you use this, you can finally stop her." I nodded slowly. "This folder?" I said. "This is enough for legal action." "More than enough," Erica said. "And I'll testify if it comes to that." The room was silent again, but the silence felt different, not empty, charged, alive, like the moment right before lightning strikes. I stood up and walked to my desk, pulled out the number May had given me for a civil litigation attorney she trusted. As I dialed, Erica sat still, eyes on the tea she hadn't touched. The call connected. I gave my name, confirmed the documents, and scheduled the first appointment. When I hung up, I turned back toward Erica. "With your help," I said. "I filed the lawsuit." She nodded. "And then," I added, my voice low, controlled, "I made the call that would change everything." The morning I filed the lawsuit, the sky was clear and cold. October in Cleveland, blue above, gray below. I stood outside the courthouse steps holding a manila folder that might as well have been made of fire. Inside, printed screenshots, notarized statements, a copy of the forged deed, and Erica's written testimony. I'd read through it so many times the words had started to blur. May met me at the front entrance, dressed like the judge she used to be, smart blazer, scarf knotted perfectly, calm steel in her eyes. "You ready?" she asked. I wasn't, but I nodded anyway. We moved through security, past the brass detector and into the maze of polished floors and laminated signs. It didn't matter how many legal shows I'd watched or how many times I imagined this moment. Nothing prepared you for how cold a courthouse felt, even when you were the one bringing the truth. May led the way to the clerk's office. The lawsuit was a two-part strategy. First, we were filing civil fraud charges against Amanda for forging my name on a legal property transfer. Second, May had initiated a probate hearing regarding Uncle Dean's trust, requesting a freeze on any attempted interference from Amanda or my parents until the court could verify rightful heirship. Every form, every stamped page, every notarized signature, it all built toward one purpose: accountability. The clerk glanced over the documents, typed in a few notes, and handed me a receipt. "You'll be notified of the preliminary hearing date by the end of the week." And just like that, it was done. Not the fight, not the fallout, but the first, irreversible step. I walked out with May by my side, the wind picking up around us. I half expected thunder, lightning, a dramatic gust of wind, but it was just a Tuesday. Still, something in me shifted. Back at my apartment that night, I opened my laptop and checked Amanda's social media. Nothing. Radio silence. For someone who loved to post filtered selfies with boss babe captions, the sudden quiet was louder than any scream. She knew. Word had gotten around fast. A cousin texted me a vague, saw something online. "Is it true you're suing Amanda?" I didn't respond. Let them guess. Let them whisper. For the first time in years, I was the one holding the truth. And they could come to me if they wanted it. May called 2 days later. "The probate hearing is scheduled," she said. 2 weeks from Friday. "Will it be public?" She paused. "Yes. Anyone listed in the trust or with interest in the estate will be notified." So, the family, all of them. I sat down, my pulse slow but heavy. For years, I'd been the one who bowed out of reunions, who said no to dinners, who stayed home and smiled politely when people said Amanda was just a little intense. Now, they'd see everything: the lies, the forgery, the quiet theft that Amanda tried to cover with charm and half-truths. And for once, I wouldn't have to explain myself. The evidence would speak for me. That night, I took the folder out again and flipped through the documents one more time. Erica's screenshots, Amanda's carelessly arrogant emails, my forged signature, Uncle Dean's amendment, naming me as heir. It was all here, proof that I wasn't the bitter daughter or the jealous sister. I was the one who stayed, the one who worked, the one who gave and gave until there was nothing left, and still they asked for more. But not anymore. This wasn't revenge. This was truth, finally allowed to stand up on its own legs. As I slid the folder back into the drawer, my phone buzzed. No name, just a message. "You don't have to do this. Think about Mom and Dad. Think about what you're putting them through." Amanda, still trying to shift the blame, still pretending I was the villain in her crumbling performance. I didn't reply. I just stared out the window, past the streetlights and quiet trees, and said it aloud only to myself. "The hearing is set. They'll be forced to face me in front of the whole family." It is the Montal processions. I arrived at the courthouse early, like I always do when stakes are high. The sun was just rising over downtown Cleveland, casting long shadows through the tall windows. The air smelled faintly of old wood polish and coffee, but it couldn't mask the tension in the hallways. Inside the courtroom, everything was precise, ordered. The judge's bench rose like a throne. The attorneys filed papers with the crisp sound of authority, and the gallery my family sat fidgeting in the wooden seats. Some faces were unfamiliar, distant relatives who hadn't called in years, now here to witness the unraveling of decades of lies. Amanda was there, of course, sitting stiffly beside Mom and Dad. Her carefully curated appearance looked perfect at first glance. Designer jacket, glossy hair, poised smile, but there was a subtle tremor in her hands. I noticed it immediately. Her mask was slipping. May sat to my left, calm as ever, holding the folder that contained every piece of evidence we'd collected. Erica was next to her, giving me a reassuring nod. I felt a quiet surge of courage. This wasn't just a legal battle. This was the moment I finally had a voice. The bailiff called the court to order, and the proceedings began. Amanda's attorney tried to introduce some procedural delays, but May objected firmly, presenting our timeline and evidence, piece by piece. When it was my turn, I stood. I felt the polished floor under my shoes, the weight of the room pressing down, every eye, friend, enemy, or indifferent cousin staring at me. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't quiver. I spoke slowly, deliberately, showing each document, each email, each screenshot. This forged deed, I began, holding up the paper for the judge to see, was submitted without my knowledge or consent. My signature was copied, and the transfer was intended to bypass the rightful terms of Uncle Dean's trust. Inten disgusted the Wobblebrechted. I watched Amanda blanch under the questioning. Her attorney fumbled for words, glancing at her notes like they might magically repair the damage. May asked pointed questions. When was the first time you became aware of this? Who had access to the property documents? Do you have evidence showing the intent to defraud? I presented it all, calmly, clearly, factually. Amanda tried to interject. It's not what it looks like. The judge held up a hand. Silence. Continue, he said, voice measured. Her composure cracked. She stumbled over her words, tried to spin stories that didn't line up with the emails Erica had provided, contradicting her own statements. I could see the shift in the room. Cousins exchanging glances, relatives whispering, the air thick with tension. For the first time, Amanda wasn't controlling the narrative. The judge asked pointed questions about the deed transfer. Amanda tried to argue that it was a misunderstanding that I had somehow agreed indirectly through family discussions. But the emails, the timestamps, the screenshots, all evidence led back to intentional action on her part. May summarized for the court. Your Honor, the evidence shows a pattern of deliberate, malicious behavior intended to defraud Rachel Monroe of property, to which she is legally entitled. This was not a misunderstanding, nor an accident. This was premeditated. Amanda's face paled further. Her smug demeanor evaporated completely. Mom's eyes darted to Dad, guilt barely masked. Dad's jaw tightened. Silence stretched over the gallery like a drawn curtain. Then, the judge leaned forward, peering over his glasses. After reviewing the evidence, this court finds that the deed transfer submitted by Amanda Monroe is invalid and was executed with malicious intent. The words hit me like a wave. My chest loosened. My throat finally felt free. Triumph. Amanda's shoulders slumped, and she sank slightly into her chair. Mom dabbed at her eyes. Dad muttered something under his breath. I didn't care. I had waited decades for acknowledgement of my work, my integrity, my worth. The gavel pounded. Finality. I exhaled slowly, the weight of years lifting. I felt light, empowered, seen. Then May whispered softly in my ear, "Don't relax just yet. There's one more thing." I raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" She smiled faintly, eyes sharp. "Grandpa left something behind. Something not in the original discussions. Something that makes this victory sweeter than it looks." I felt a spark of curiosity mixed with cautious optimism. My heart, still racing from the court, skipped a beat. The gallery cleared slowly after the preliminary ruling. Family members murmured among themselves. Amanda was quiet. She wasn't plotting her next move, she was reeling. I stepped outside into the crisp Cleveland air, lungs filling with the October chill. The sunlight bounced off the courthouse steps, reflecting a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in years. Justice hadn't been explosive. It hadn't been violent, but it had been precise, surgical, and the truth had finally been allowed to speak. Yet even as relief and pride coursed through me, May's words echoed. Grandpa had left something behind, something more, and I knew, deep down, that my story and my rightful inheritance wasn't finished yet. The next chapter, the final piece of the puzzle, was waiting. The mailbox had been quiet all week. Normally, I'd only get the usual bills, some catalogs, and the occasional letter from my bank. But that day, as I bent down to pick up the day's mail, something smaller and different caught my eye. A postcard, slightly worn around the edges, with a familiar handwriting I hadn't seen in years. I recognized it immediately. Grandpa Henry. I held it in my hand, feeling the weight of it. Not heavy light, almost fragile, but somehow, it carried all the years I'd spent proving my worth, all the invisible labor I'd endured, all the silent battles no one else saw. I sat down at my kitchen table, carefully opening the postcard. The handwriting was unmistakable, slanted, flowing, confident. Dear Rachel, you've always been the one I knew would do the right thing, even when it wasn't easy. I've watched quietly as your parents and Amanda failed to recognize your worth. I want you to know, I've always seen you. To make up for what has been withheld from you, I've left you the beach house in Clearwater, Florida. Use it as you wish for peace, reflection, or just a place to breathe. With all my love, Grandpa Henry. I couldn't breathe for a moment. My hands trembled as I reread it. A beach house. In Florida. Grandpa had quietly ensured I was taken care of, even as everyone else ignored me, dismissed me, and tried to erase me. The room spun slightly. I leaned back in my chair, clutching the postcard. My chest felt tight, full of a mixture of relief, disbelief, and an overwhelming sense of validation. He had watched, he had waited, and he had acted on his own, in the way he knew would protect me. I thought of the retirement party, Dad's toast, Amanda's smug smirk, Mom's silent approval, every slight, every humiliation, every invisible contribution I had made to their store, to their lives, had been noted by someone who truly mattered. And now, finally, I had proof. Tears pricked the corners of my eyes. But this time, they weren't tears of sadness. They weren't the heavy, suffocating tears I had shed alone at my apartment when I realized I was invisible to my own family. These were tears of release, of closure, of acknowledgement. I picked up my phone and snapped a photo of the postcard. Not to post online, not to prove anything to anyone else, just to hold on to the moment, this tangible proof that my worth had always been visible to someone who truly mattered. I took a deep breath, letting it out slowly. The beach house, the inheritance, the legal victory in probate court. Everything was falling into place, and for the first time in my life, I felt not just relieved, but genuinely free. I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the bustling Cleveland streets. Cars honked, leaves swirled in the wind, kids walked home from school. Life went on, oblivious to the storm I had endured. But inside, I felt calm, grounded, and solid. Somewhere in Florida, Grandpa Henry had chosen to give me a piece of the world that was truly mine, a sanctuary, a reward for enduring years of invisibility, for standing strong even when no one else noticed. I realized then that my fight wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't about seeing Amanda or my parents crumble, although that was happening in its own way. It was about claiming my own life, my own space, my own peace. I sat back down, flipping the postcard over and over in my hands. There was a map drawn in faint pencil on the back, directions to the beach house. Simple but precise. He had thought of everything, making it easy for me to step into this new chapter without struggle. I couldn't help but smile. A genuine smile. The kind that spreads from your chest to your face and lingers. Grandpa had always been the one who saw me. He had known the truth about the family dynamics, the favoritism, the lies, the invisible labor. And he had acted quietly, decisively, with all the foresight I lacked in those moments of doubt. I felt a strange sense of alignment, the injustice I'd endured finally balanced by the support I'd never expected to receive. I put the postcard down on the counter, my hands still warm from holding it. I looked around my apartment, at my small life that had been full of compromises and sacrifices. For the first time, it felt like it belonged to me, every square inch, every memory, every choice. And I understood something deeply, clearly. Grandpa hadn't just left me a house or a trust. He had left me affirmation, validation, recognition that my years of giving, enduring, and staying true to myself mattered, that I mattered. He always knew the truth, and now everyone else did too. I hadn't expected it to spread so quickly. A few screenshots Erica and I had saved, showing Amanda's lies, manipulations, and her attempts to forge my signature, went online carefully, strategically, shared with family groups first, then quietly posted to a broader circle. And then, like a match thrown into dry leaves, it blew up. Comments poured in. Relatives I hadn't spoken to in years chimed in. Some of them were polite, cautious. Wow. I never realized what was really happening. I feel sick thinking she got away with this all these years. Others were blunt. Amanda, stop lying. Everyone sees the truth now. We trusted you, and you abused it. Shame on you. And there got a bad as brach. Has one dinget in the another tapped in his common and stards. The most satisfying part? The missteps Amanda had relied on for months. The forgery, the falsified documents, the fake narratives were now public. Every claim she made, every sly comment online, crumbled under the weight of proof. I watched as her carefully crafted image, polished to perfection, started to fracture. At first, she tried to respond. Short posts, vague denials, emojis meant to soften the blow. But each one only added fuel to the fire. Screenshots of her denials were shared alongside the original evidence, creating a cascade that no amount of spin could fix. My phone buzzed constantly, notifications from cousins, friends, and even strangers who had once admired Amanda. Messages came in, one after the other. Wow, Rachel. I had no idea. I'm so sorry she lied to all of us. We always wondered why you were quiet about this. Thank you for standing up. I leaned back in my chair, a small smile tugging at the corners of my mouth. Validation. Relief. The gnawing anxiety I had carried for months, the fear that Amanda's lies would succeed, that my efforts to fight her would be ignored, finally loosened. Even at work, my colleagues rallied. A few teachers sent supportive messages. We've always known you're the one holding things together. So proud of you. Let Amanda try to spin her stories. We know the truth. Don't let her affect you. End quote. End quote. End quote. End quote. Tentry. Emails arrived from parents of students I'd helped, some sharing personal stories, some just offering encouragement. I felt buoyed by the solidarity of people who had seen me, truly seen me, long before this scandal erupted. But the best part, the part that finally made me feel a sense of justice, was seeing Amanda's social media accounts plummet. Friends unfollowed her. Former allies distanced themselves. Her carefully curated reputation, once untouchable, cracked under the scrutiny of the truth. I scrolled through the posts and couldn't help but laugh quietly. Not cruelly, just softly, for relief's sake. Every lie she told, every smirk, every claim of moral superiority, all of it was exposed. And all I had done was stand back and let the evidence speak. But just as the sense of victory began to settle, a knock at my door interrupted the moment. I wasn't expecting anyone. My parents hadn't called. My sister wasn't allowed near my apartment. And even most of my extended family had been carefully kept at bay. I opened the door to see Mom. Her eyes were red, her cheeks streaked with tears. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched a small scarf she had clearly been gripping for comfort. Mom? I said cautiously, stepping aside to let her in. She didn't speak immediately. She just crossed the threshold and sank into my couch, curling her hands into her lap. Her voice came out in a whisper, cracked and uneven. Rachel, I didn't know, I didn't see. I'm so sorry. I blinked, caught off guard by the sudden vulnerability. Mom had never apologized before, not for the favoritism, not for standing silently while Amanda took the credit, not for the constant dismissals that had shaped so much of my life, but this wasn't an apology I could just accept and move on. I had learned, painfully, that words without action were worthless. I sat across from her, folding my hands in my lap. Mom, it's too late for apologies, I said softly. Actions have consequences. Thanks for watching. Her head dropped into her hands. I know. I didn't realize how far she would go. And I should have stood up for you. I exhaled slowly, letting a fraction of the tension leave my shoulders. I felt a strange mix of pity and distance. Her tears weren't going to undo the years she had failed me, but they were human. I've spent years standing up for myself, I said. This is on her now, and it's time she faces it. Mom nodded, her shoulders shaking slightly. I understand. I turned my attention back to my laptop, refreshing social media feeds, seeing Amanda's influence crumble post by post. For the first time in years, the sense of validation was complete. I had been silent for so long, ignored for so long, but now the truth was out. The world had seen it. My peers had seen it, my coworkers, my friends, even extended family. They had witnessed my integrity, my restraint, my resilience. And Amanda? She was left with nothing but the cracks in the mirror she had so carefully polished. But the moment was interrupted, leaving a lingering tension in the room. Mom's presence, crying on my couch, reminded me that not every battle was external. Some battles were still internal, navigating forgiveness, closure, and trust. And the next step, the next confrontation, the next revelation, was already waiting. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the day, the relief, and the anticipation of what was to come. The cracks were forming in Amanda's mirror. The truth had begun to shine, but the day wasn't over yet. The knock came late in the afternoon, just as the sunlight started turning the city streets golden. I wasn't expecting anyone. Not Mom, not Dad, not Amanda. And yet, there she was, standing on my doorstep, Mom. Her coat was too heavy for the mild chill, her hair slightly disheveled, her eyes red-rimmed. She looked smaller somehow, diminished in the glow of the fall light, like a shadow of the matriarch she once tried to be. I opened the door a crack, wary. "Rachel, please, can we talk?" Her voice was raw, trembling. Not the controlled, dismissive tone I'd heard for years. This was new, vulnerable, almost human. I didn't know it had gotten this bad. "Amanda, she's ruined everything. The store, the relationships, everything. I need your help." I listened, leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed. I felt the weight of the years settle into my shoulders. All the birthdays ignored, the milestones dismissed, the countless nights I stayed up fixing their mistakes while Amanda soaked up praise, all of it. I could feel my heartbeat slowing. My anger, usually tight and coiled, had softened into something colder. Quiet. Resolve. "Mom," I said slowly. "I've heard enough words for a lifetime." Her eyes widened slightly, as if she hadn't expected my calm, controlled response. "Rachel, I know. I know I've failed you. I wasn't the mother I should have been. But I'm asking now. Please, just help us make it right." I swallowed. My chest felt tight. The temptation to open the door wider, to step in and console, to take the path of least resistance, flickered briefly. But I knew better. Years of neglect and favoritism don't disappear with a plea for help. Years of erasure can't be erased in a single conversation. "I can't, Mom," I said firmly, stepping back and closing the door slightly. "I won't be the one fixing this anymore. You and Amanda have made your choices." Her lips quivered. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. I could see the frustration, the fear, the realization that her daughter, the one she'd pushed aside for so long, was no longer available to bail her out. I just thought, I thought family meant something to you," she whispered. I exhaled, letting the cool air fill my lungs, grounding me. "It does. But family doesn't mean I let you take from me endlessly. Family doesn't mean I erase myself so someone else can look good. You had every opportunity to see me, to respect me, and you didn't." Her shoulders slumped. She looked smaller still, the weight of her own actions pressing down. "I understand," she said quietly, voice cracking. I know you're right. I was blind." I didn't answer. I let the silence stretch. Let her feel the consequences of years of ignoring, dismissing, and enabling. Then I made my choice not in anger, but in calm, deliberate action. I stepped back, locked the door, and leaned against it for a moment. The click of the lock felt like the final note in a symphony I'd been conducting for years. I didn't feel triumph or satisfaction. I felt clarity. I didn't slam the door. I didn't shout. I didn't gloat. I just closed it. And for the first time, fully, I realized I didn't need them. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need their gratitude or recognition. I had been giving them my energy, my time, my money, my heart, and now I was giving those things to myself. I stepped back from the door and exhaled. The autumn air was cool against my face, a reminder that the world continued beyond the reach of manipulation and betrayal. I thought of Grandpa Henry, the way he had silently observed, understood, and prepared for this moment. His trust, his postcard, the beach house in Clearwater, a sanctuary waiting for me, untouched by the failures of others. A smile tugged at my lips. Not a triumphant smile, not one of revenge. Just a small, quiet acknowledgement that I had finally reclaimed what was mine. I looked down the street, the shadows stretching long and golden, and whispered to myself, "This isn't over. For them. But it is over for me." And then I knew what I had to do next. I had one more visit to make to that little beach house Grandpa left me. It wasn't just a property. It was a symbol, a reward, a clean slate, a place to breathe, to reflect, to start a life that belonged entirely to me. No favors, no manipulation, no lies, just me. I grabbed my coat, feeling lighter than I had in years, and stepped away from the door. The final severing had been made. The bridge burned. carefully, consciously, but without anger. Freedom, for the first time, wasn't a concept. It was a tangible, living thing under my hands, in my chest, in every step I took toward that beach house. And I knew, deep down, that when I arrived, I wouldn't be the same Rachel who had walked into the retirement party, dismissed, overlooked, invisible. I would be Rachel seen, respected, and fully in control of her own life. The first time I saw the beach house, it was bathed in the soft glow of late afternoon Sunday. Nothing fancy, no grand columns or sprawling lawns, just a modest, weathered home perched on a quiet street, the kind of place that whispered stories instead of shouting them. A low fence, a small front porch with 2 wicker chairs, and the faint, comforting smell of salt carried in from the Gulf of Mexico. I parked the car and stared for a long moment. Somehow, the sight of it calmed me in a way I hadn't expected. Not pride, not ownership, just peace. I stepped out, the warm sand under my shoes, the soft crunch of gravel beneath my feet. The ocean was faint in the distance, waves lapping at the shore like a heartbeat. I walked up the porch steps and paused at the door. My hand hovered over the knob. This was more than a house. This was Grandpa Henry's final gesture, quiet, intentional, and filled with trust. I opened the door. Inside, the house smelled of old wood, sun-warmed fabrics, and a faint trace of salt. Modest furniture, simple decor, everything carefully placed but not extravagant. It didn't feel like a museum or a trophy, it felt alive, welcoming, homey. I wandered from room to room, touching the surfaces, feeling the history. The walls held stories I could imagine. Grandpa Henry reading in the evenings, quiet mornings on the porch, letters tucked away in drawers. The place was filled with echoes of care. In the small study by the window, I found it. A leather-bound journal, worn and frayed at the edges, sitting atop a simple wooden desk. My heart thudded as I picked it up. Inside, neat handwriting. Familiar handwriting. Rachel. It began. I've watched you quietly for years, giving more than anyone noticed, staying calm when others faltered, always choosing integrity over convenience. You are the niece I always knew would honor family, not just with actions but with your heart. This home is yours because you deserve it, not for what you've done for me, but for who you are. I swallowed hard, fighting tears. Page after page, he wrote about moments he had witnessed. Me balancing the family store's books, the late nights correcting mistakes no one else acknowledged, the patience I had shown despite favoritism and betrayal. Each line felt like a hand on my shoulder, affirming everything I had ever doubted about myself. By the time I finished reading, I was sitting on the floor, journal clutched to my chest, tears spilling freely. Not angry tears, not bitter tears, tears of release. This house wasn't just a gift. It was recognition, validation, a quiet, unwavering statement that I had always mattered, that my worth wasn't contingent on approval from anyone else. I stood, brushing tears from my cheeks, and walked to the small porch. I sat in one of the wicker chairs, the warm breeze brushing against my face, the sound of waves faint but constant. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was carrying the weight of someone else's failures. No invisible labor, no forgotten contributions, no need to prove myself to anyone, just me. I closed my eyes and let the wind wash over me. This was peace, not the fleeting kind you find in distraction, not the kind that comes from control or revenge. This was grounded, real, permanent. I could feel the years of tension, resentment, and self-doubt slipping away. Each wave seemed to carry a little more of it out to sea. Opening my eyes, I looked out over the street, the distant shore, the horizon stretching endlessly. Here, I could breathe. Here, I could plan. Here, I could finally start to live on my terms. I walked back inside and placed the journal on the desk. I glanced around the room and noticed small details Grandpa must have chosen intentionally. A few books on the shelf, a photo of him and my Uncle Dean, a small seashell on the windowsill. Every choice was personal, deliberate. Every detail said, "This is yours now. Take it. Own it." I wandered back to the living room and opened the sliding door to the backyard. A tiny patch of sand led to a private walkway to the beach. I stepped out barefoot, letting the cool sand sink between my toes, the sound of the waves grounding me. I sat on the small dune, looking out at the water. No notifications, no obligations, no family drama pressing down. Just me, the journal, and the endless Gulf of Mexico stretching to the horizon. And for the first time, I understood something fundamental. This wasn't an ending. It wasn't just a reward. It wasn't just inheritance or legal victory. This was a beginning, a place to heal, to rebuild, to live the life I had worked for, not for anyone else's approval, but for myself. I could almost hear Grandpa's voice in the wind. Calm, proud, steady. You've always been seen. You've always mattered. I let the breeze carry away the last threads of anger and doubt. My shoulders felt lighter, my chest felt open, and I finally smiled a real smile, full and easy. This house was more than walls and windows. It was a sanctuary, a promise, a marker of freedom. And I knew, deep down, that everything I had endured, every slight, every dismissal, every manipulated situation had led me here. I had survived, I had triumphed, and now, at last, I could begin. Back in Cleveland, life felt different. Not because the city had changed, it hadn't. The streets, the coffee shops, the crisp autumn air were all the same. But I had changed. I moved differently now. Lighter, unburdened, intentional. Each step felt like reclamation. Each breath was mine. I had started small. The school library, my safe space for years, became my base of operations for a project I'd been dreaming of, but never had the courage or resources to start. A community literacy nonprofit. I called it Pages for All. The idea was simple: provide books, tutoring, and literacy programs for children in underserved neighborhoods. The mission was clear: empower young minds to read, to imagine, and to dream, because everyone deserves the chance to be seen and heard, just like I finally had. The first week was chaos. Volunteers, registrations, curriculum planning, donations, all of it landed on my desk at once. I kept lists, color-coded spreadsheets, sticky notes plastering the walls of my office. I thrived in the chaos. The kind of chaos I had once choked on when dealing with the family store. But now, I was in control. Everything was mine to shape, to build, to nurture. Emails from parents started coming in. Questions about tutoring sessions, offers to donate books, notes of gratitude, the kind I had never received from my own family. And yet, even as I was building something beautiful, I kept one eye on reality. Amanda. I received the first notification through a distant cousin who had always been sympathetic to me. Amanda had filed for bankruptcy. Not shocking, not really. The store had collapsed months ago after I stopped supporting it financially. The IRS audits, overdue bills, vendor cancellations, all of it had piled up like a slow-moving avalanche. She tried to recover, of course. Some half-hearted attempts at consulting, posts on social media claiming she was starting fresh, but anyone who knew the truth, and now, nearly everyone did, saw it for what it was: damage control, a last-ditch effort to salvage her reputation. Part of me felt a flicker of satisfaction. Not vindictive satisfaction, not joy in someone else's misfortune, just validation. The system she tried to manipulate had finally caught up to her. Mostly, though, I felt relief. Relief that I no longer had to fix what she broke. Relief that my life wasn't tethered to someone else's chaos. Relief that I could finally build, uninterrupted, on my own terms. The first tutoring session began with a small group of 6 kids. I watched them carefully, observing how they struggled with words, how frustration furrowed their brows, how hope, tiny but bright, sparked in their eyes when they succeeded. It was in those moments, guiding a young girl through a tricky passage or helping a boy sound out a difficult word, that I felt the full weight of my own growth. All the lessons I had learned, all the patience I had cultivated in the shadows of my family's favoritism, suddenly mattered. I realized something. The skills I had honed in the family store organization, problem-solving, leadership, weren't just professional tools. They were survival skills, and now, they were mine to wield for good. I spent hours curating books, setting up schedules, coordinating with volunteers. Each email sent, each call returned, each program set in motion felt like another brick in the foundation of the life I was building. And still, life had its quiet surprises. I was reviewing the week's plan, making notes for curriculum improvements, when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Hey, long time, can we meet?" I frowned, curious. The name displayed was Brian. Brian. My heart skipped. Memories flooded back: the structural engineer I'd met at a networking event, the one whose quiet humor and steady presence had made me feel safe, comfortable, seen. We had drifted apart after the family drama escalated. Life had gotten in the way. I never imagined he'd reach out now, months later, after everything had happened. I stared at the message for a long moment. My pulse quickened. Hesitation, curiosity, excitement all tangled together. I realized something profound. Just as I was rebuilding my professional life, my personal life had room to grow too. To open again, to welcome connection and support that wasn't transactional, manipulative, or conditional. I typed back carefully, keeping my guard but letting a spark of openness peek through. I'd like that. When are you free? Thank you for watching this fighting and descend. And as I set my phone down, I looked around the office at the stacks of books, the organized chaos, the programs ready to launch, and felt an overwhelming sense of pride and empowerment. I had survived family betrayal, deceit, manipulation, and abandonment. I had faced the legal battles, the lies, the emotional manipulation, and now, in the midst of building a community program that would touch countless lives, I felt strong, capable, and fully alive. The sense of ownership, of self-respect, of autonomy was intoxicating. And the future, professional, personal, emotional, suddenly felt wide open. Then, out of nowhere, Brian walked back into my life. I had been nervous, even though I'd spent countless mornings giving advice to kids, colleagues, and volunteers. This wasn't a school meeting, a library briefing, or a nonprofit strategy session. This was a date. Brian had arrived early, holding 2 steaming cups of coffee. He smiled when I walked in, that quiet, steady smile that always seemed to balance out my restless energy. I felt my chest lighten in a way I hadn't felt in years. "Morning," he said, offering a hand that immediately went warm against mine. "Morning," I replied, setting down my bag and sliding into the seat across from him. The cafe was lively but not crowded. The kind of place where you could hear the occasional clink of cups and muffled conversations but still feel like it was your own private world. We started small, talking about the nonprofit, the kids I'd met, the books I was curating. Brian listened intently, asking questions that weren't perfunctory. He genuinely cared about the work I was doing, the effort I poured into something that wasn't about fame, money, or recognition, something pure. "I've always admired that about you," he said softly, stirring his coffee. "You don't do things for applause. You do them because they matter. See." I felt a flutter in my chest, a warmth that went deeper than physical attraction. Someone had finally seen me, not my role in a family, not my contributions that were always invisible, not my achievements that were ignored, but me. "Thanks," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's nice to hear that." He reached across the table, his hand brushing mine. "You deserve to hear it more often." We talked for over an hour, moving from light topics, favorite books, travel dreams, weekend hikes, to deeper conversations about family, betrayal, and resilience. I told him just enough, careful not to drown the moment in old pain, but enough to let him understand who I was and what I'd been through. Brian didn't flinch. He didn't try to fix anything. He just listened. And that, for me, was revolutionary. For the first time, I didn't feel like I had to prove my worth. I didn't have to defend myself. I didn't have to anticipate judgment. I just existed. I laughed at one of his dry, unexpected jokes, and it echoed in the cafe in a way that felt like sunlight through a window. Joy. Pure, unburdened joy. As we finished our coffee, I realized something profound. I was building a new family of choice, not bloodline, one rooted in mutual respect, support, and love, rather than manipulation, neglect, and expectation. Brian was a part of that family now, steady, grounding, and genuine. Erica, too, and May and Kathleen, people who had stood by me without condition. These were my roots. My chosen family. The conversation drifted to future plans. The nonprofit, the beach house, and even casual talk about trips or projects we could collaborate on. I felt invigorated, inspired. Every idea was met with encouragement, not dismissal. Every goal seemed attainable. It hit me then. For the first time, I felt fully seen, not as the invisible daughter, not as the second fiddle, not as the fixer, but as Rachel, fully, entirely, and finally acknowledged. He reached across the table again, giving my hand a reassuring squeeze. "You're stronger than most people realize, and anyone who gets to be in your life is lucky." I smiled, letting the moment sink in. Self-love, trust, and connection intertwined in a way that felt natural, unforced, and completely grounding. By the time we left the cafe, the sun had risen higher, casting light over the streets, illuminating the buildings in a way that made everything feel new. I walked beside Brian, shoulder to shoulder, stepping into a life that I had intentionally reclaimed. The weight of my past, the family betrayals, the legal battles, the smears, the invisibility felt distant, manageable. I had faced every challenge and come out intact, even stronger. And as we parted at the corner, promising to meet again, I realized something else. The world was no longer a battlefield. It was a canvas. And for the first time, I could paint it in my own colors. Walking back to my apartment, I passed by a shop with a reflective window. For the first time in decades, I liked the woman staring back at me. Confident, calm, resilient. A woman who had weathered storms, survived manipulation, and come into her own with grace. But even as my heart swelled with joy, I couldn't ignore the small flutter of anticipation in my chest. There was one more moment, one final milestone, that would solidify everything I had built, everything I had fought for, and nothing compared to it. Because when I walked into my new office the next morning, I saw it. My name on the door. The first thing I noticed when I walked into the office that morning was the sunlight. It poured through the tall front windows, casting soft gold across the tables stacked with books, the reading corner filled with pillows and bright posters, and the small whiteboard where we tracked every donation, every tutoring session, every milestone we reached. But it was the name on the glass door that stopped me. Rachel Monroe, Executive Director, Pages for All Literacy Foundation. Not Monroe the daughter. Not Rachel the sister. Not the silent helper. The emotional mule. The overlooked shadow. Just me. I stood there a moment longer than I meant to, hand resting on the doorframe, smiling like I had stumbled into someone else's dream, only it was mine. Inside, I could hear Dina laughing with one of our volunteers, the sound of kids flipping through books, and the steady rhythm of a new day beginning. This place wasn't just a nonprofit. It was living proof that I had taken every broken piece of my past and turned it into something good, something real. I stepped inside. My office was modest, a desk, a bulletin board cluttered with thank you notes and sticky reminders, and a photo of the beach house, framed and sitting proudly next to my laptop. But it felt like a palace. Every paper, every decision, every corner of this space was mine to manage. Not for anyone else's benefit. Not to earn someone's love or forgiveness, but because I had earned it. I sat at my desk, opened the laptop, and started sorting through emails. A school from across town wanted to partner on a mobile library program. A local news station asked if they could interview me next week. A donor had offered to fund our summer reading challenge. This is what thriving looked like. Not flashy, not loud, just forward momentum, grounded in purpose. And as I typed, responded, and delegated, my mind drifted not with longing or pain, but with clarity. Amanda had gone quiet after the trial. Her name hadn't surfaced in any circles that mattered to me. The last I'd heard, she was living with an old friend in a cramped condo, trying to piece together some version of her life. Bankruptcy had humbled her, or at least silenced her. My parents? Still in denial, according to a cousin. They'd sold off what little they had left, blaming bad luck for everything that had unraveled. But their silence told me what I needed to know. Even if they didn't apologize, they knew. Deep down, they knew. The story they had written, the one where I was the backup daughter, the support system, the invisible extra, had finally fallen apart. I wasn't angry anymore. I didn't carry the bitterness. It was like a fire that had burned hot and fast, then died out completely, leaving behind clean air. Because here's what they never understood. When you stop needing people to see you, you start seeing yourself, and I had. Not through revenge, not through screaming matches or slammed doors, but through building something no one could take away. Pages for All had grown from a sketch in a notebook to a full organization with staff, volunteers, and students whose lives were changing because of me. I looked over at the window, the soft morning light glinting off the framed journal page I kept from Grandpa Henry's notebook. The one who stays kind when no one's watching, that's the one who deserves it all. I whispered a quiet thank you to him. For seeing me when no one else did. For setting aside a legacy that would carry me not just through survival, but into strength. Just then, Dina poked her head in. "Morning, boss. You ready for the city rep meeting at 10? I grinned. Born ready. She smiled back and disappeared down the hall. That was my circle now, real allies. People who showed up without expectations, who didn't demand I sacrifice myself to feel loved. I opened a new document on my laptop, drafting next quarter's proposal. The page was blank. It didn't intimidate me. It thrilled me. Blank pages, blank chapters, new beginnings. I had the pen now. For a long time, they wrote me off. Dismissed me, underestimated me, called me too soft, too serious, too sensitive. They built their stories without me. And when I no longer fit their version of who I should be, they tried to erase me. But here I was. Not only standing, thriving, my story wasn't one they got to write anymore. Because I had taken the ending they handed me and rewritten it from scratch. And the last line? They wrote me off. But I wrote my own ending.